Jeffrey Boyd's eyes widen as the stunningly beautiful Betazoid woman before him recoils in visible disgust. Her telepathic abilities have picked up on his attraction, and her reaction makes it clear that human anatomy is about to become a major diplomatic incident. "You have... what?" Tara, his assigned liaison, asks with a mix of disbelief and revulsion. "Physical organs for reproduction? That's primitive and revolting." Jeffrey swallows hard, realizing the cultural chasm he's just stumbled into. He's barely set foot on the Betazoid homeworld, and already Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation hangs by a thread. The sleek silver shuttle that brought him here still hums on the landing pad behind him, its ramp extended like an escape route he can no longer take. The spired crystal towers of the Betazoid capital glitter in the purple-tinged sunlight, a stark contrast to the growing tension in the air. Tara stands rigidly, her flowing iridescent robe shimmering as she takes a step back from Jeffrey. Her large dark eyes narrow with suspicion. "I'm sorry," Jeffrey begins, struggling to find the right words. "I wasn't aware that Betazoids reproduce differently. On Earth, physical intimacy is a natural part of our biology and culture." Tara's face contorts in a mixture of fascination and horror. "We Betazoids procreate through a complex psychic process. The very idea of physical organs for such purposes is unthinkable." A crowd of Betazoids begins to gather, their telepathic murmurs creating a palpable atmosphere of unease. Jeffrey feels exposed, not just physically but mentally, knowing that his every thought is an open book to these people. "The High Council will need to be informed of this," Tara announces, her voice carrying a note of authority. "They were already skeptical about admitting a species as undeveloped as humans to the Federation. This revelation may change everything." Jeffrey's heart sinks. He's acutely aware that the future of Earth's place in the galactic community now rests on his shoulders, and those shoulders are attached to a body that the Betazoids find utterly alien and disturbing. "I understand your concerns," Jeffrey says, trying to project calm and diplomacy. "Perhaps if we could discuss this further, I could explain human biology in a way that—" "Explain?" Tara interrupts, her tone sharp. "No, Mr. Boyd, the High Council will require more than explanations. They will demand a full medical examination to understand the extent of human physiological differences." The crowd's telepathic whispers grow louder, and Jeffrey notices several Betazoids hurrying away, likely to spread the news of the alien human and his bizarre anatomy. "A medical examination?" Jeffrey repeats, a knot forming in his stomach. He's here as a diplomat, not a scientific specimen, but refusing could doom the entire mission before it even begins. Tara nods curtly. "Yes, and I will personally oversee the procedure to ensure all necessary information is gathered." Jeffrey takes a deep breath, steeling himself for what's to come. He's about to be poked, prodded, and scrutinized in ways he never imagined. And the person in charge of this intimate invasion is the very woman who finds his body repulsive. As Tara leads him towards a towering structure that must be their medical facility, Jeffrey notices angry faces in the crowd. Anti-human sentiment is already taking root, fueled by fear and misunderstanding. He realizes that bridging this vast cultural divide will take more than words or treaties. It will require him to bear not just his body, but the very essence of human nature to a species that views them as primitive. With each step, the weight of his responsibility grows. Earth's future in the stars, the potential for humanity to join a vast galactic civilization, all of it now hinges on what lies beneath his diplomatic uniform. Jeffrey straightens his back, determined to face whatever comes next. He must find a way to turn this biological revelation into a bridge between worlds, even as Tara's lingering gaze betrays a growing curiosity that wars with her initial revulsion. The doors of the medical facility loom before them, ready to usher in a new chapter in human-alien relations, one that will begin with the most awkward physical Jeffrey has ever experienced. The doors of the medical facility slide open with a soft hiss, revealing a stark, pristine interior. Jeffrey's heart races as he steps inside, Tara close behind him. The air carries a faint antiseptic scent, a stark contrast to the floral aromas of the Betazoid gardens outside. "This way, Mr. Boyd," Tara says, her voice cool and professional. She leads him down a corridor lined with shimmering, translucent walls that seem to pulse with an inner light. They enter a large circular chamber dominated by a central examination platform. A team of Betazoid medical professionals awaits them, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. At the head of the group stands a tall, distinguished-looking male Betazoid. "I am Dr. Zinn," he introduces himself, dark eyes scanning Jeffrey with clinical interest. "We will be conducting your examination today." Jeffrey nods, swallowing hard. "I understand. I'm ready to cooperate fully." Dr. Zinn gestures to the platform. "Please, remove your clothing and lie down." As Jeffrey complies, he feels the weight of every gaze in the room. The cool surface of the platform sends a shiver through his body as he lies back, fighting the urge to cover himself. Tara stands at the edge of the room, her face a mask of professionalism, but Jeffrey catches a flicker of something else in her eyes, a growing curiosity that seems to war with her initial revulsion. Dr. Zinn activates a hovering array of instruments that begin to scan Jeffrey's body. Holographic displays spring to life around the room, showing detailed anatomical images that elicit gasps and murmurs from the Betazoid team. "Fascinating," Dr. Zinn murmurs, his fingers dancing over a control panel. "The complexity of the internal organ systems is remarkable." As the scan reaches Jeffrey's reproductive organs, the room falls silent. Dr. Zinn's eyes widen, and he leans in for a closer look at the display. "This is unexpected," he says, his voice a mix of shock and intrigue. "The physical structures for reproduction are far more developed than we anticipated." Tara steps forward, her professional demeanor slipping as she stares at the images. "How is this possible? It's so primitive." Jeffrey feels a flush of embarrassment, acutely aware of his exposed state and the scrutiny he's under. He tries to focus on the importance of his mission, on bridging the gap between their species, but the clinical detachment of the Betazoids makes him feel more alien than ever. Suddenly, Jeffrey becomes aware of an unwelcome physiological response. To his horror, his body begins to react to Tara's proximity and the intensity of her gaze. He tries to will it away, but the more he focuses on it, the worse it becomes. The reaction doesn't go unnoticed. A wave of shock ripples through the room as the Betazoids observe the physical change. "What's happening?" one of the medical team asks, alarmed. Dr. Zinn leans in, fascinated. "It appears to be some sort of autonomic response. Remarkable." Tara's face flushes a deep shade of purple, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and something Jeffrey can't quite identify. I'm sorry," Jeffrey stammers, mortified. "It's an involuntary reaction. I can't always control it." The room erupts into heated debate. Some of the Betazoids back away, clearly disturbed, while others lean in, eager to study this unexpected phenomenon. Dr. Zinn's voice rises above the others. "This is a unique opportunity for scientific study. We must investigate further." "No," another voice counters. "This is a threat to our cultural purity. We can't risk contamination by these physical beings." As the argument intensifies, Jeffrey notices Tara slipping away from the group. She moves to a nearby console, her fingers flying over the controls. With a start, he realizes she's accessing the examination data, her face a mask of concentration as she delves deeper into the information about human biology. Outside the facility, the sound of raised voices filters through. Jeffrey catches glimpses of a growing crowd through the windows, many holding signs with anti-human slogans. Dr. Zinn notices Jeffrey's concern. "News travels fast in a telepathic society," he explains. "Your presence here has caused quite a stir." Before Jeffrey can respond, an alarm blares through the facility. Red lights pulse along the walls, and a computerized voice announces, "Security breach detected, emergency protocols engaged." Tara rushes back to the group, her face pale. There's a group of extremists trying to infiltrate the building. They're demanding the humans' immediate departure. Dr. Zinn's expression hardens. "We can't let them interfere with our work. This is too important." As chaos erupts around him, Jeffrey sits up on the examination platform, acutely aware of his vulnerability. He locks eyes with Tara, seeing the conflict written across her face. "What do we do now?" he asks, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. Tara hesitates for a moment, then squares her shoulders. We need to get you to safety. And then we need to talk to the High Council. This situation is spiraling out of control. As Tara helps Jeffrey off the platform and hands him his clothes, the facility shudders. The sounds of the angry crowd outside grow louder, and the air fills with the acrid smell of smoke. Dr. Zinn rushes to a communication panel. The environmental systems are malfunctioning. We need to evacuate immediately. Jeffrey pulls on his uniform, his mind racing. He knows that the next few moments could determine not just his fate, but the future of Earth's relationship with the Galactic Federation. As he follows Tara towards what he hopes is safety, he steels himself for whatever challenges lie ahead. The facility's emergency systems kick in, sealing off sections as smoke begins to fill the corridors. Jeffrey and Tara stumble through the chaos, their path illuminated by flashing red warning lights. This way, Dr. Zinn calls out, beckoning them towards a secure chamber. They rush inside, the door hissing shut behind them, just as the sound of breaking glass echoes from down the hall. As the airtight seal engages, Jeffrey notices the room's atmosphere changing. The air grows thin, and he finds himself gasping for breath. Tara's eyes widen in alarm as she too begins to struggle. The environmental controls are malfunctioning, Dr. Zinn announces, his fingers flying over a control panel. Oxygen levels are dropping rapidly. Jeffrey's vision begins to blur, his lungs burning with each shallow breath. He reaches out, instinctively grasping Tara's hand. She doesn't pull away, her own fear overriding her aversion to physical contact. As consciousness starts to fade, Jeffrey feels a surge of regret. He's failed his mission, failed Earth. His last thought before blackness claims him is of Tara's hand in his, a final connection between their two worlds. Suddenly, a rush of cool air floods the chamber. Jeffrey's eyes snap open as he gulps in deep breaths. Dr. Zinn and his medical team hover over them, concern etched on their faces. We've stabilized the environment, Dr. Zinn explains, helping Jeffrey to his feet. You were unconscious for only a few moments. Tara rises shakily, her hand still clasped in Jeffrey's. She stares at their joined fingers, a mix of confusion and wonder in her eyes. I felt your fear, she whispers, and something else. Something I've never experienced before. Dr. Zinn observes their interaction with keen interest. Fascinating, he murmurs. The stress of the situation seems to have triggered an unprecedented empathic response. As they exit the secure chamber, they find the facility in disarray. The protesters have been pushed back, but the damage to the building and the rising tensions are evident. In the following days, as order is restored, Dr. Zinn approaches the Betazoid High Council with a bold proposal. Jeffrey and Tara stand before the stern-faced council members, acutely aware of the weight of the moment. Esteemed council, Dr. Zinn begins, the recent events have provided us with a unique opportunity. I propose a controlled study of human reproductive biology with Mr. Boyd as our subject. Murmurs of shock and disapproval ripple through the chamber. The head counselor raises a hand for silence. What you suggest goes against our most fundamental cultural norms, Dr. Zinn. I understand, counselor, Jeffrey interjects, stepping forward. But this could be a chance for both our species to learn and grow, to truly understand each other. The council deliberates, their telepathic communication creating an almost tangible tension in the air. Finally, they reach a decision. We will allow this study, the head counselor announces, under strict conditions. It will be constantly monitored, and we reserve the right to terminate it at any time. Jeffrey nods, relief washing over him. It's a chance, however small, to salvage Earth's position in the Galactic Federation. As the council adjourns, Tara approaches Jeffrey, her expression conflicted. I've decided to volunteer as the Betazoid participant in the study, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. Jeffrey's eyes widen in surprise. Are you sure? The consequences for you... I'm sure, Tara interrupts, a determined set to her jaw. What I experienced during our ordeal, I need to understand it. The next week sees them relocated to a specially designed facility on the outskirts of the capital. The stark white rooms are a far cry from the crystal spires of the city, but they offer the privacy and controlled environment necessary for the study. Under Dr. Zin's watchful eye, Jeffrey and Tara begin with the most basic of human interactions. Their first task, holding hands. Tara's fingers tremble as they intertwine with Jeffrey's. Her eyes close, brow furrowing in concentration. "It's overwhelming," she gasps. "I can feel your pulse, your warmth, and something else. Something emotional." Jeffrey nods, understanding. Humans often experience a rush of oxytocin, a bonding hormone, from physical touch, he explains. As the days pass, they progress to other forms of contact. Each simple embrace or touch on the arm sends shockwaves through Tara's system, her telepathic abilities amplifying every sensation. Outside the facility, the situation deteriorates. Crowds of protesters grow larger and more vocal each day. News broadcasts show debates raging across Betazoid society, with the younger generation especially fascinated by the idea of physical intimacy. Inside, Jeffrey finds himself in the unexpected role of teacher, explaining human courtship rituals to an increasingly captivated Tara. "So this dating is a process of getting to know a potential mate?" she asks, her head tilted in curiosity. Jeffrey nods, a small smile playing on his lips. "It's about building emotional connections, yes, but it's also about having fun, enjoying each other's company." Tara's eyes light up with understanding. "I see. And this kissing you mentioned, it's a part of that process?" Before Jeffrey can respond, Dr. Zin bursts into the room, his face alight with excitement. "We've made an extraordinary discovery," he announces. "Tara, your prolonged physical contact with Jeffrey appears to be stimulating the development of vestigial reproductive organs in your body." The revelation sends shockwaves through the research team. As Dr. Zin explains the implications, Jeffrey notices Tara's hand unconsciously reaching for his. Their fingers intertwine, and he feels a jolt of something more than just physical connection. As the sun sets on another day of study, casting long shadows across the facility, Jeffrey and Tara stand by a window, watching the distant lights of the Capitol. The air between them crackles with unspoken tension. "Jeffrey," Tara says softly, turning to face him. I think I'm ready to try that kissing now." Jeffrey's heart races as he leans in, their lips meeting in a gentle, tentative kiss. For a moment, the world seems to fade away, the controversy and danger outside forgotten. Suddenly, alarms blare throughout the facility. They break apart, startled, as Dr. Zin's voice comes over the intercom. "Security breach, intruders in the East Wing. All personnel, initiate lockdown procedures immediately." Jeffrey and Tara exchange a look of alarm. The intimate moment shattered. They now face a threat that could derail not just the study, but the future of human Betazoid relations. As the facility plunges into darkness, they brace themselves for whatever comes next, knowing that the true test of their newfound connection is about to begin. The facility's emergency lights cast an eerie red glow as Jeffrey and Tara move swiftly through the corridors, their hearts pounding in sync with the blaring alarms. "This way," Dr. Zin called out, gesturing towards a secure room at the end of the hall. As they approached, the sound of breaking glass and angry shouts grew louder. Suddenly, a group of masked figures burst through a nearby door. Jeffrey recognized them immediately as the anti-human assassins who had been threatening the research facility for weeks. "Stop right there," the lead assassin shouted, brandishing a weapon that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. Jeffrey stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Wait," he said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "Let's talk about this." The assassin's eyes narrowed behind his mask. "There's nothing to talk about, human. Your presence here is a threat to our way of life." Jeffrey took a deep breath, his diplomatic training kicking in. "I understand your concerns," he said, "but violence isn't the answer. I have a proposal." The assassins exchanged glances, their weapons still trained on the group. Jeffrey seized the moment of hesitation. "I'll leave Betazoid voluntarily," he offered, "right now, but in exchange you have to guarantee the safety of Dr. Zin and Tara. They're your own people after all." Tara gasped beside him, her hand instinctively reaching for his. Dr. Zin opened his mouth to protest, but Jeffrey silenced him with a look. The lead assassin tilted his head, considering. You'd sacrifice yourself for them. Jeffrey nodded, without hesitation. A tense silence fell over the corridor. Unbeknownst to the assassins, Betazoid security forces had been monitoring the situation through hidden cameras. Impressed by Jeffrey's selfless act, they chose that moment to intervene. With a sudden rush of movement, security officers flooded the hallway from both directions. The assassins, caught off guard, were quickly disarmed and subdued without a single shot fired. As the security team led the assassins away, Jeffrey sagged against the wall, the adrenaline draining from his system. Tara wrapped her arms around him, her body trembling. You were willing to give up everything, she whispered. For us. Before Jeffrey could respond, a commotion at the end of the hall caught their attention. A group of Betazoid officials approached, led by a stern-faced woman Jeffrey recognized as a member of the High Council. Mr. Boyd, she said, her voice carrying the weight of authority, your actions today have given us much to consider. The Council is convening an emergency session to reassess human Betazoid relations. Your presence is required. Hours later, Jeffrey found himself standing before the full Betazoid High Council. The chamber buzzed with tense energy as the councilors debated the recent events. Councilor Vex, known for his moderate views, rose to speak. Esteemed colleagues, he began, today's events have shown us that our current approach to human relations is untenable. We cannot continue to isolate ourselves from the galaxy. I propose a bold new initiative, a cultural exchange program between Earth and Betazoid. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the chamber. Vex continued, outlining his plan for a small group of humans to live on Betazoid, while a group of volunteer Betazoids would travel to Earth. The debate raged for hours. Conservative factions argued fiercely against the proposal, warning of cultural contamination and the erosion of Betazoid values. But in the end, swayed by Jeffrey's earlier display of self-sacrifice and the potential benefits of greater understanding between their species, the Council narrowly approved the exchange program. As the Council adjourned, Jeffrey was approached by the head counselor. Mr. Boyd, she said, in light of your actions and your unique position, we would like to appoint you as the human ambassador to oversee this program on Betazoid. Do you accept? Jeffrey nodded, a mix of excitement and trepidation washing over him. It would be my honor, he replied. As he left the council chambers, Jeffrey found Tara waiting for him. Her eyes shone with a mix of emotions he couldn't quite decipher. I've made a decision, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I want to volunteer for the Betazoid group going to Earth. Jeffrey's eyes widened in surprise. Are you sure? It's a big step. Tara nodded, reaching out to take his hand. I'm sure. What I've experienced with you, I need to understand it better, and I want to learn more about your world. As they stood there, hands clasped, Dr. Zinn approached, his face alight with excitement. Jeffrey, Tara, he said breathlessly, I've just received approval from the Council to continue my research on human Betazoid interactions, with strict ethical guidelines, of course. Jeffrey smiled, feeling a glimmer of hope for the future. But before he could respond, a new voice cut through the air. So, this is the human causing all the fuss. They turned to see a tall, imposing man striding towards them. His crisp uniform marked him as a high-ranking Earth official. Captain Marcus Steele, he introduced himself, his piercing gaze sweeping over the group. I've been assigned to lead the human delegation to Betazoid and assess the situation here. Jeffrey straightened, sensing the captain's skepticism. Welcome to Betazoid, Captain. I look forward to working with you on this historic exchange program. Captain Steele's eyes narrowed slightly. We'll see about that, Mr. Boyd. I hope you haven't forgotten where your true loyalties lie. As Captain Steele walked away, Jeffrey felt the weight of his new responsibilities settling on his shoulders. He looked at Tara, then at Dr. Zinn, aware of the complex web of relationships and duties he now had to navigate. The cultural exchange program was set to begin, but it was clear that the real challenges were just starting to unfold. With anti-human sentiment still simmering among some Betazoids and Earth's own reservations about the program, Jeffrey knew he would need all his diplomatic skills to make this bold experiment succeed. As the Betazoid sun set, casting long shadows across the crystal spires of the city, Jeffrey squared his shoulders. Whatever lay ahead, he was determined to bridge the gap between their two worlds, no matter the consequences. Cost. As the weight of his new responsibilities settled on Jeffrey's shoulders, he knew that the true test of diplomacy and cultural understanding was about to begin. In the days that followed, tensions on Betazoid reached a critical point. Anti-human protests grew larger and more frequent, while conservative factions within the government pushed for an immediate end to the cultural exchange program. Jeffrey, acutely aware of the precarious situation, realized that drastic action was needed to salvage not only the program, but also Earth's chances of joining the Galactic Federation. After careful consideration and consultation with Dr. Zinn and Tara, Jeffrey proposed a bold plan: a public demonstration of human Betazoid cooperation, broadcast planet-wide, that would showcase controlled physical interactions between the two species. "It's a risk," Jeffrey explained to Captain Steele, who listened with a skeptical frown. "But it's our best chance to demystify human physical intimacy and show its potential benefits for Betazoid society." The captain's eyes narrowed. "And if it backfires, we could lose everything we've worked for." Jeffrey met his gaze steadily. "Then at least we'll have tried. Sometimes, Captain, diplomacy requires a leap of faith." With reluctant approval from both Earth and Betazoid authorities, the event was scheduled for the following week. As preparations began, Jeffrey and Tara worked tirelessly to recruit willing participants from both species. On the day of the demonstration, a palpable tension filled the air. The chosen venue, a large open square in the heart of the capital city, was surrounded by a mix of curious onlookers and angry protesters. Security forces stood at the ready, prepared for any potential violence. Jeffrey took a deep breath as he stepped onto the raised platform at the center of the square. Cameras hummed to life, broadcasting his image to millions of Betazoid homes. "People of Betazoid," he began, his voice calm and clear. "Today, we invite you to witness and participate in an exchange of cultures. We ask only that you approach this experience with an open mind and heart." He gestured to Tara, who joined him on the platform. They began with a simple handshake, explaining the gesture's significance in human culture. Tara's eyes widened at the contact, a subtle shiver running through her body. "It's warm," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the microphones. "I can feel his emotions, his intent. It's beautiful." As the demonstration progressed to hugs and gentle touches, more volunteers joined them on the platform. Betazoids gasped and murmured as they experienced physical contact, many for the first time. The empathic feedback they received seemed to overwhelm and fascinate them in equal measure. Dr. Zinn, monitoring the participants' vital signs, suddenly called for Jeffrey and Tara's attention. "Remarkable," he exclaimed, gesturing to his instruments. "Tara, your body is producing previously unknown hormones. They appear to be enhancing your telepathic abilities." This announcement sent a ripple of excitement through the crowd. Even some of the protesters fell silent, their curiosity piqued. As Jeffrey and Tara demonstrated more intimate forms of contact, the cameras captured a startling sight. Tara's body was visibly changing, her newly developed reproductive organs becoming more prominent. The live feed showed close-ups of her transformation, eliciting gasps from the Betazoid audience. Suddenly, a commotion erupted at the edge of the square. Elder Zoral, leader of the conservative faction, had arrived with a group of supporters. They carried signs denouncing the demonstration and shouted for its immediate end. "This is an abomination," Zoral's voice boomed across the square. "We must protect the purity of our race." But as he urged his followers to disrupt the event, something unexpected happened. Several young Betazoids from his own group, drawn by curiosity, broke away and approached the platform. With hesitant steps, they joined the demonstration, reaching out to touch the human participants. The defection from Zoral's ranks visibly shook the elder. His voice faltered as he watched his supporters drift away, leaving him increasingly isolated. As the demonstration continued, a group of excited Betazoid scientists pushed their way through the crowd to reach Dr. Zinn. They carried with them a collection of ancient artifacts, their eyes bright with the thrill of discovery. "Dr. Zinn," one of them called out breathlessly, "we've found something incredible. These artifacts, they suggest our species once possessed physical reproductive organs similar to humans." The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled crowd. Dr. Zinn, his hands trembling with excitement, examined the artifacts closely. Jeffrey, recognizing the potential impact of this information, quickly conferred with Dr. Zinn. "We need to present this to the High Council immediately," he urged. As security forces escorted the scientists and their precious cargo to the council chambers, Jeffrey turned back to the crowd. The demonstration had taken an unexpected turn, but he could see the shift in the Betazoids' expressions. Curiosity had replaced fear, and many were now eagerly waiting their turn to experience physical contact. Captain Steele, who had been watching from the sidelines with a mixture of concern and grudging admiration, approached Jeffrey. "I have to admit, Boyd," he said quietly, "this was a bold move, and it seems to be working." Jeffrey nodded, allowing himself a small smile. "It's a start, Captain, but we still have a long way to go." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the square, Jeffrey knew that this day had marked a turning point. The cultural exchange program had been given new life, and with it, Earth's chances of joining the Galactic Federation had dramatically improved. But as he watched Tara interact with a group of fascinated young Betazoids, he felt a twinge of uncertainty. The changes happening to her body, the deepening of their connection, what would it all mean for their future? And how would these rapid changes affect Betazoid society as a whole? With the High Council now deliberating over the newly discovered artifacts and the success of the demonstration, Jeffrey knew that the next few days would be crucial. Whatever decisions were made would shape not only the future of human-Betazoid relations, but potentially the entire course of Betazoid evolution. As the crowd began to disperse, Jeffrey caught Tara's eye across the platform. The look they shared was one of hope, tinged with the knowledge that their journey was not nearly finished. The true challenges, it seemed, were only just beginning. The true challenges, it seemed, were only just starting to unfold. As the days passed, tension mounted across the Betazoid homeworld. The impending referendum on human-Betazoid relations loomed large, polarizing the population and pushing society to its breaking point. Jeffrey Boyd found himself at the center of a political maelstrom, working tirelessly alongside Captain Marcus Steele to ensure the safety of human personnel and maintain order during this crucial event. The morning of the referendum dawned clear and crisp. Jeffrey stood at the window of his temporary quarters, watching as Betazoids began to form lines outside voting centers across the city. The air crackled with anticipation and unease. "It's time," Captain Steele said, stepping into the room. His face was a mask of dedication. "Let's hope your gambit pays off, Boyd." They made their way to the central security hub, where Betazoid officers were coordinating efforts to safeguard the voting process. Screens displayed feeds from across the planet, showing a mix of orderly queues and small pockets of unrest. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. One by one, the screens flickered and went dark. Reports flooded in of explosions at power stations, communication towers toppling, and transportation hubs grinding to a halt. "It's the Purity Vanguard," a Betazoid officer shouted over the chaos. "They're launching coordinated attacks across the planet." Jeffrey's mind raced. He turned to Captain Steele, who was already barking orders into his communicator. "We need to split up," Jeffrey said. "I'll coordinate with local forces to protect the voting centers. You focus on securing our personnel and technology." As they rushed out of the hub, Jeffrey caught a glimpse of Dr. Zinn on one of the few remaining active screens. The scientist was gesturing frantically, surrounded by artifacts and panicked colleagues. Before Jeffrey could process the image, he was swept into the streets, now filled with terrified Betazoids fleeing the chaos. Jeffrey sprinted towards the nearest voting center, where a crowd had gathered. As he approached, he saw a group of young Betazoids forming a human chain around the building's perimeter. At their center stood a tall, charismatic youth with fierce eyes. "We will not let fear dictate our future," the youth shouted, his voice carrying over the din. "We stand with our human friends against this violence." Inspired by their bravery, Jeffrey joined the chain, linking arms with the Betazoids on either side of him. He felt a surge of emotion flow through the connection: commitment, hope, and a fierce desire for change. Across the city, similar scenes unfolded. Betazoids and humans worked side by side to protect voters and maintain order. Captain Steele coordinated rapid response teams. his tactical expertise proving invaluable in countering the Purity Vanguard's attacks. As the day wore on, reports trickled in of Elder Zoral's arrest. Tara had used her enhanced abilities to extract crucial information from a captured extremist, exposing the Elder's involvement in the attacks. The news sent shockwaves through Betazoid society, further weakening the anti-human movement. But the Purity Vanguard had one last card to play. As evening fell, word spread that the planet's central voting system had been compromised. The entire referendum teetered on the brink of collapse. In a moment of inspiration, Jeffrey proposed a daring solution. "We can use Earth's satellite network," he explained to the skeptical council members who had gathered at the security hub. "It's secure, independent, and can be quickly adapted to handle the voting data." After tense deliberations, the council agreed. Captain Steele immediately began coordinating with Earth to implement the emergency system. Within hours, voting resumed, with Betazoids casting their ballots through human technology. As the new system came online, Jeffrey received an urgent message from Dr. Zinn. Tara's condition had deteriorated rapidly. Her body was struggling to complete the reactivation of her reproductive system, putting her life at risk. Torn between his duty and his heart, Jeffrey made a split-second decision. He raced to the medical facility, leaving Captain Steele to oversee the final hours of voting. At Tara's bedside, Jeffrey watched helplessly as Dr. Zinn and his team worked to stabilize her condition. Her body shimmered with an otherworldly glow, new organs forming and shifting beneath her skin. "Stay with me, Tara," Jeffrey whispered, clasping her hand. "We've come too far to lose you now." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. The Purity Vanguard, in a last desperate act, had launched an attack on the central vote-counting center. Without hesitation, Jeffrey squeezed Tara's hand one last time and sprinted from the room. He arrived at the center to find it under siege. Extremists had breached the outer defenses and were closing in on the core databanks. With no time to wait for backup, Jeffrey plunged into the fray. Using skills honed during his time on Betazoid, Jeffrey maneuvered through the chaos. He disabled security systems, redirected power flows, and used his knowledge of the facility's layout to outmaneuver the attackers. As he reached the central data core, Jeffrey found himself face-to-face with the leader of the assault team. The Betazoid's eyes blazed with hatred as he raised his weapon. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Jeffrey's training kicked in, his body moving almost of its own accord. The sound of the struggle echoed through the facility, broadcast live across Betazoid. Millions watched as a human fought to protect their democratic process, risking his life for an alien world. As the last of the attackers were subdued, an eerie quiet fell over the vote-counting center. Jeffrey, bruised and exhausted, made his way to the main control room. The final votes were being tallied, the future of two worlds hanging in the balance. Outside, Betazoids and humans alike held their breath, waiting for news that would shape their shared destiny. The referendum result, still unknown, had the power to transform not just Betazoid society, but the entire galactic landscape. In the medical facility across town, Tara's eyes fluttered open, her body finally stabilizing. And in that moment, as two worlds stood on the precipice of change, the first light of a new dawn began to break over the horizon. Betazoid horizon. The hours ticked by with agonizing slowness as votes were tallied throughout the night. Jeffrey paced the corridors of the medical facility, his mind a whirlwind of concern for Tara and anxiety over the referendum's outcome. The future of two worlds hung in the balance, and he felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. As the first rays of dawn broke over the city, a hush fell over the planet. Betazoids and humans alike held their breath, waiting for the announcement that would shape their shared destiny. Finally, the High Council's spokesperson appeared on screens across the planet. "The results of the referendum are as follows," the spokesperson began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "By a narrow margin of 51.3% to 48.7%, the people of Betazoid have voted in favor of approving the cultural exchange program and the evolutionary experiment." A collective gasp rippled through the crowds gathered in public squares and homes across the planet. Jeffrey felt a surge of relief wash over him, followed quickly by a renewed sense of purpose. The real work was only just beginning. Without wasting a moment, he rushed to Tara's room. As he entered, he found Dr. Zinn checking her vital signs, a look of cautious optimism on his face. "How is she?" Jeffrey asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Zinn turned to him, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "She's stabilized, but the changes to her body are progressing rapidly. The reactivation of her reproductive system is unlike anything we've ever seen before." Jeffrey moved to Tara's bedside, taking her hand in his. Her skin felt warm, almost feverish, and he could sense the turmoil of new sensations and emotions roiling within her. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing on his face. "Jeff," she murmured, her voice weak but filled with wonder. "I feel everything. It's overwhelming." He squeezed her hand gently. "I'm here, Tara. We'll get through this together." As Jeffrey kept vigil by Tara's side, the world outside continued to shift and change. Captain Marcus Steele, recognizing the diplomatic victory achieved through the referendum, sprang into action. He commandeered a large building in the heart of the capital, quickly establishing a temporary Earth embassy to oversee the cultural exchange program and manage the delicate balance of human betazoid relations. Steele's communicator chirped incessantly as he coordinated with Earth, arranging for the first group of human volunteers to be transported to Betazoid. Despite his earlier reservations about Jeffrey's personal involvement with Tara, he couldn't deny the positive impact their relationship had on diplomatic efforts. "Boyd," Steele said, his voice gruff but not unkind as he entered Tara's hospital room, "I need you back on duty as our primary liaison. Can you handle it?" Jeffrey looked up from Tara's bedside, conflict evident in his eyes. But before he could respond, Tara spoke up. "Go, Jeff," she said, her voice stronger now. "This is bigger than us. I'll be okay." With a nod of understanding to both Tara and Captain Steele, Jeffrey left the medical facility to dive back into his diplomatic duties. The streets were a mix of celebration and tension as he made his way to the newly established Earth Embassy. Reports of Purity Vanguard cells going underground filtered through security channels, and Jeffrey knew they'd have to remain vigilant against potential attacks. At the embassy, Jeffrey found himself thrust into a whirlwind of activity. He coordinated with Betazoid security forces, helped establish protocols for the incoming human volunteers, and worked tirelessly to smooth over any cultural misunderstandings that arose in the wake of the referendum. Days blurred together as the first group of human volunteers arrived on Betazoid. Among them was Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a renowned xenobiologist whose expertise in alien physiology made her an invaluable addition to the research team. Jeffrey watched as she strode confidently into Dr. Zinn's lab, her eyes alight with scientific curiosity. "Dr. Zinn," Elena said, extending her hand, "I'm thrilled to be working with you on this groundbreaking project." Dr. Zinn hesitated for a moment before shaking her hand, still unused to the human custom of physical contact. "Welcome, Dr. Rodriguez. Your reputation precedes you." As the two scientists began to discuss the intricacies of the evolutionary experiment, Jeffrey could sense an underlying tension. Their methodologies and approaches seemed to clash, and he made a mental note to keep an eye on the situation. Meanwhile, a group of young Betazoids, inspired by Tara's bravery, had volunteered to undergo the reactivation process. Among them was Varen, the charismatic youth who had led peaceful counter-demonstrations during the referendum. His participation lent additional legitimacy to the experiment and helped quell lingering doubts among the Betazoid population. Jeffrey found himself pulled in multiple directions, balancing his diplomatic duties with his desire to support Tara through her ongoing physical changes. The success of the referendum had thrust him into the spotlight, and he found himself the subject of intense media scrutiny and public fascination. As he walked through the streets of the capital, he overheard whispered conversations and caught sideways glances from curious Betazoids. The attention was unsettling, and he knew it was putting a strain on his relationship with Tara. Returning to the medical facility one evening, Jeffrey found Tara sitting up in bed, her face flushed with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Jeff," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "Dr. Zinn says the changes. They're progressing faster than anyone anticipated. I'm capable of physical reproduction now." Jeffrey felt a rush of conflicting emotions: joy, fear, desire, and uncertainty. He took Tara's hand, feeling the warmth of her skin and the subtle tremors running through her body. "Tara, he began, but was cut off by the sudden appearance of Dr. Zinn and Captain Steele. "Boyd," Steele said, his voice grave, "we need to talk. The High Council has established new guidelines for intimate interactions between humans and betazoids. Given your position and the delicate nature of our mission here, we need to discuss how this affects you and Tara." Jeffrey looked from Captain Steele to Tara, feeling the weight of his duty to Earth and his personal feelings colliding. As he opened his mouth to respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility, signaling yet another crisis demanding his attention. The choice before him was clear, yet impossibly difficult. As he stood there, torn between duty and desire, Jeffrey knew that his next decision would have far-reaching consequences for both his relationship with Tara and the future of human betazoid relations. The alarms continued to blare as Jeffrey's communicator buzzed with urgent messages. He cast an apologetic glance at Tara before turning to Captain Steele. "What's the situation, sir?" Jeffrey asked, already moving towards the door. "Multiple attacks on research facilities across the city," Steele replied grimly. "The Purity Vanguard is making their move." As they rushed out of the medical facility, Jeffrey's mind raced. The delicate balance they'd achieved with the referendum was now under threat, and he knew the next few hours would be crucial. Over the following days, Jeffrey found himself at the center of a diplomatic maelstrom. The cultural exchange program, barely underway, faced its first major crisis. Reports flooded in of human volunteers violating the High Council's strict regulations on interactions with betazoids. Jeffrey stood before the council, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "I understand your concerns, but we must not let the actions of a few jeopardize our entire mission." An elder council member leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "And what of your own actions, Mr. Boyd? Your relationship with Tara has not gone unnoticed." Jeffrey felt a flush creep up his neck, but maintained his composure. "My personal life is separate from my diplomatic duties. I assure you, I've adhered to all regulations." As he left the council chambers, Jeffrey's communicator chirped. It was Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the newly arrived xenobiologist. "Mr. Boyd, I need to see you immediately. My findings, they're going to change everything." In Dr. Rodriguez's lab, Jeffrey found her poring over holographic displays of betazoid and human DNA. Her eyes were alight with excitement and a hint of apprehension. "Look at this," she said, gesturing to a complex molecular structure. "The reactivated reproductive systems in betazoids. They're far more compatible with human physiology than we ever imagined." Jeffrey leaned in, trying to make sense of the data. "What does this mean exactly?" Dr. Rodriguez took a deep breath. "It means that human betazoid offspring might be possible, viable offspring." The implications hit Jeffrey like a physical blow. He thought of Tara, of the regulations keeping them apart, of the potential consequences of this discovery. Before he could fully process the information, alarms blared once again. Captain Steele's voice crackled over the comm system. "Boyd, get to the Central Plaza now. We've got a situation." Rushing to the scene, Jeffrey found a large crowd gathered. At its center stood Varan, the young betazoid, who had volunteered for the evolutionary experiment. His voice rang out, clear and passionate. "We have the right to explore our new capabilities," Varan shouted. His words met with cheers from the evolved betazoids around him. "The High Council cannot dictate how we use our own bodies." Jeffrey pushed through the crowd, catching Varan's eye. The young betazoid nodded in recognition before continuing his speech. As Jeffrey worked to contain the situation, his communicator buzzed again. This time, it was Dr. Zinn. "Mr. Boyd, I've made a discovery about our past. It's unsettling. Please come to my lab as soon as you can." Hours later, exhausted from managing the protest and coordinating with Captain Steele, Jeffrey finally made his way to Dr. Zinn's lab. The betazoid scientist looked shaken, his usually calm demeanor disrupted. "What did you find?" Jeffrey asked, bracing himself for more upheaval. Dr. Zinn gestured to an ancient artifact on his desk. "This contains records of our ancient history. It seems we once had a culture centered around physical intimacy, but something happened. a catastrophe that led us to abandon it entirely. As Jeffrey absorbed this revelation, his communicator chirped yet again. Captain Steele's voice was tense. "Boyd, we've got a major problem. A group of human volunteers. They've organized some kind of secret gathering with evolved betazoids. It's been discovered by local authorities." Jeffrey's heart sank. He knew this could be the spark that ignited all the simmering tensions. As he raced to the scene, his mind whirled with possible solutions, ways to mitigate the damage. Arriving at the location, Jeffrey found a chaotic scene. Betazoid security forces were rounding up humans, and evolved betazoids alike. Among the crowd, he spotted Varun, looking defiant even as he was led away in restraints. Captain Steele appeared at Jeffrey's side, his face grim. "This is a diplomatic nightmare, Boyd. I'm suspending the exchange program and placing all human volunteers under house arrest until we can sort this out." Jeffrey nodded, knowing the captain had no choice. But as he watched the scene unfold, an idea began to form in his mind. It was risky, potentially career-ending, but it might be the only way to salvage the situation. "Captain," Jeffrey said, his voice low and determined, "I have a proposal. It's unorthodox, but it might be our best chance at turning this around." Steele raised an eyebrow, gesturing for Jeffrey to continue. As Jeffrey outlined his plan for a controlled, supervised program of intimate interactions between humans and evolved betazoids, he could see the captain's expression shifting from skepticism to cautious interest. "It's a bold move, Boyd," Steele said finally. "But in this situation, bold might be exactly what we need. Present it to the High Council. I'll back you up." As Jeffrey prepared to face the council once again, he knew that the fate of human betazoid relations, and possibly Earth's place in the galaxy, hung in the balance. The challenges ahead were immense, but for the first time in days, he felt a glimmer of hope. Hope, as he took a deep breath, steadying himself for the challenges ahead, Jeffrey's communicator buzzed once more. This time, it was Tara. "Jeff," her voice trembled with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Dr. Rodriguez has approached me with a proposal. She wants us to participate in a controlled study on human betazoid intimacy. I think we should do it." Jeffrey's heart raced as he processed Tara's words. The timing couldn't have been more precarious, with the Galactic Federation delegation due to arrive any moment to assess the situation on Betazoid. Yet he knew this could be the key to bridging the growing divide between their species. "I'll be right there," he replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil of emotions within. When Jeffrey arrived at the research facility, he found Dr. Rodriguez and Tara deep in discussion. The xenobiologist's eyes lit up as she saw him enter. "Mr. Boyd," Elena said, gesturing for him to join them, "I'm glad you're here. Let me explain the parameters of the study." Over the next hour, Dr. Rodriguez outlined the carefully designed protocols for the experiment. Jeffrey and Tara would undergo a series of monitored physical interactions, while a team of scientists recorded every physiological change, brain activity spike, and hormonal fluctuation. As Elena spoke, Jeffrey couldn't help but notice the mix of scientific detachment and almost unchecked excitement in her voice. This was uncharted territory, with potential implications that could reshape human betazoid relations forever. "I'll do it," Jeffrey said, his eyes meeting Tara's. She nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The news of their decision spread quickly, sending shockwaves through both human and betazoid communities. Jeffrey found himself under intense scrutiny from all sides. Some hailed him as a pioneer, while others accused him of recklessly endangering diplomatic relations. Captain Steele pulled Jeffrey aside just before the first session of the study. "I hope you know what you're doing, Boyd," he said, his voice low. "The stakes have never been higher." Jeffrey nodded, acutely aware of the weight of his decision. As he entered the sterile laboratory where the experiments would take place, he saw Tara already waiting, her face a mix of nervousness and persistence. Dr. Rodriguez and her team bustled around them, attaching sensors and calibrating equipment. "Remember," Elena said, her voice steady, "we'll be monitoring everything. If at any point either of you feels uncomfortable, we'll stop immediately." The first few sessions were tentative, filled with awkward moments as Jeffrey and Tara navigated the unfamiliar territory of sanctioned intimacy under the watchful eyes of the scientific team. But as days passed, something extraordinary began to happen. Jeffrey noticed it first during a routine empathy exercise. As he focused on reading Tara's emotional state, he found himself sensing not just her feelings, but those of Dr. Rodriguez and her assistants as well. It was a dizzying experience, one he had never thought possible for a human. "It's incredible," he gasped, describing the sensation to the astonished team. Meanwhile, Tara's telepathic abilities were expanding exponentially. During one session, she suddenly jerked upright, her eyes wide. "I can hear them," she whispered. "The Galactic Federation delegates. They're discussing us right now, in their ship in orbit." Dr. Rodriguez's team scrambled to document these unexpected developments. As word leaked out about the surprising results of the study, the Betazoid High Council convened an emergency session to discuss the implications. Jeffrey and Tara found themselves at the center of a political and scientific storm. The Purity Vanguard, seeing their worst fears realized, redoubled their efforts to disrupt the research. Security around the facility was tightened, with both human and Betazoid forces working in tense cooperation. Captain Steele, recognizing the potential diplomatic impact of these findings, made a bold decision. He arranged for the Galactic Federation representatives to observe a controlled demonstration of Jeffrey and Tara's enhanced abilities. The day of the demonstration arrived, bringing with it a palpable tension. Jeffrey stood before the assembled delegates, his heart pounding. As he focused his newfound empathic abilities, he began to read the emotional states of the diverse alien representatives. The room fell silent as he accurately described the complex mix of curiosity, skepticism, and awe emanating from the delegates. Tara followed, her eyes closed in concentration as she telepathically communicated with a Federation member from a previously unreachable distance. The success of her demonstration sent murmurs of excitement through the assembled crowd. As the Federation representatives conferred in hushed tones, their expressions a mix of wonder and concern, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. The Purity Vanguard had launched their most daring attack yet, attempting to destroy the lab and all the research data. Jeffrey and Tara locked eyes, a wordless understanding passing between them. Without hesitation, they began to use their enhanced abilities in tandem, coordinating with security forces to repel the attack. Jeffrey's empathic sense allowed him to anticipate the movements of the attackers, while Tara's expanded telepathy provided real-time intelligence to the defenders. In the midst of the chaos, Dr. Zin's voice crackled over the comm system. "I've decoded the artifacts," he shouted, excitement overriding the sounds of struggle. "The changes we're seeing, they're not new. They're a reemergence of dormant evolutionary traits." As security forces pushed back the Purity Vanguard, a new group arrived on the scene. Varin, leading a contingent of evolved Betazoids, joined the fray. The sight of humans, traditional Betazoids, and evolved Betazoids working in seamless cooperation caught the attention of the Galactic Federation representatives, who watched the unfolding events with keen interest. In the aftermath of the attack, as the dust settled and the full implications of Dr. Zin's discovery began to sink in, Jeffrey found himself standing before the Betazoid High Council once more. This time, however, he was not alone. Tara stood beside him, their hands intertwined, a living symbol of the potential for human-Betazoid relations. As the Council prepared to vote on new guidelines for interspecies interactions, Jeffrey knew that whatever the outcome, the future of both Earth and Betazoid had been irrevocably changed. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with both promise and peril. But for the first time since this journey began, he felt truly equipped to face it. The challenges ahead. Little did he know how quickly those challenges would escalate. In the days following the Purity Vanguard's attack, the Galactic Federation delegation extended their stay on Betazoid, their interest piqued by the potential of human-Betazoid relations. Jeffrey found himself thrust into the spotlight, fielding questions from curious alien diplomats about his experiences. During one such meeting, Dr. Elena Rodriguez approached Jeffrey and Tara with a bold proposal. "We've seen remarkable results from your initial interactions," she said, her eyes alight with scientific fervor. "I believe it's time to take our research to the next level." Elena outlined her plan for a controlled cohabitation experiment, involving multiple human betazoid pairs living together in a specially designed facility. Jeffrey listened intently, his mind racing with the implications. "This could be groundbreaking," Tara said, her hand finding Jeffrey's. "But are we ready for such intense scrutiny?" Before Jeffrey could respond, Captain Steele's voice crackled over his communicator. "Boyd, we've got a situation. The Betazoid High Council is in an uproar over Rodriguez's proposal. They're demanding a full hearing." Hours later, Jeffrey stood before the council once again, this time with Dr. Rodriguez at his side. The chamber buzzed with tension as Elena presented her case, emphasizing the potential benefits of prolonged human betazoid contact. "This is madness," one council member protested. "We cannot allow such intimate interspecies exposure without fully understanding the consequences." Jeffrey stepped forward, his voice steady. "With all due respect, council members, we've already seen the positive outcomes of human betazoid cooperation. This experiment is the logical next step in our partnership." The debate raged for hours, with arguments flying back and forth. Finally, after a narrow vote, the council approved the cohabitation experiment, albeit with strict oversight measures in place. Within weeks, Jeffrey and Tara, along with 5 other human betazoid pairs, moved into the newly constructed research facility on the outskirts of the betazoid capital. The building hummed with advanced monitoring systems, tracking their every physiological change and brain activity. As days turned into weeks, Jeffrey noticed his empathic abilities expanding rapidly. He found himself sensing the emotions of people rooms away, a dizzying experience that took time to control. One morning, as he sat with Tara in their shared living space, he suddenly gasped. "I can feel the entire facility," he whispered, his eyes wide. "Every person, every emotion, it's overwhelming." Tara squeezed his hand, her own telepathic powers having grown exponentially. "Focus on me," she said softly. "Use our connection as an anchor." Their progress didn't go unnoticed. Dr. Rodriguez's team worked tirelessly, documenting every development. Captain Steele arranged for regular updates to be sent to Earth, leading to an influx of resources and funding for the program. But not everyone was pleased with these advancements. The Purity Vanguard, though weakened, launched a sophisticated disinformation campaign. Posters appeared throughout the capital, warning of the supposed dangers of human betazoid intimacy. "They're claiming will degrade betazoid psychic abilities in future generations," Tara said one evening, her voice tight with frustration as she read the latest propaganda. Jeffrey frowned, feeling the waves of concern emanating from the city. "We need to counter these claims with hard evidence," he said, reaching for his communicator to contact Dr. Zinn. The xenoarchaeologist had been working tirelessly, delving deeper into the ancient betazoid artifacts. His breakthrough came just as the cohabitation experiment entered its 2nd month. "I've found it!" Dr. Zinn's excited voice filled the facility's common area. "Historical precedent for interspecies alliances leading to enhanced abilities. This could change everything." As the team celebrated this discovery, a commotion erupted from one of the private quarters. Lyra, a young betazoid participant, emerged with shock written across her face. I'm pregnant," she announced, her voice barely above a whisper. Her human partner, David, stood beside her, a mix of joy and apprehension radiating from him. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, the Betazoid High Council convened an emergency session. The Galactic Federation representatives requested immediate access to monitor the unprecedented pregnancy. Jeffrey and Tara found themselves at the center of a media storm. Interviews, press conferences, and debates filled their days. Through it all, their bond deepened, their enhanced abilities allowing for a level of intimacy that fascinated Dr. Rodriguez's team. As the implications of Lyra's pregnancy rippled through both human and betazoid society, Varun organized rallies in support of the expectant couple. His passionate speeches drew crowds of young betazoids and humans alike. "This child represents our future," Varun's voice boomed across the capital's main square, "a symbol of unity and progress." In response to the rapidly evolving situation, the Betazoid High Council established a special committee to draft new laws governing interspecies relationships. Jeffrey and Tara were called upon to provide insights, their experiences becoming crucial in shaping these groundbreaking regulations. As the cohabitation experiment approached its third month, Dr. Rodriguez announced plans for expansion. "We need to broaden our study," she explained to the assembled participants. "More couples, different environments. We're on the cusp of something extraordinary." Jeffrey and Tara exchanged a look, their enhanced connection allowing them to share a moment of silent understanding. They knew that their relationship had become a catalyst for change on a galactic scale. As they prepared for the next phase of the experiment, the weight of responsibility settled upon them, along with the exhilaration of the unknown that lay ahead. As they prepared for the next phase of the experiment, the weight of responsibility settled upon them, along with the exhilaration of the unknown that lay before them. The third month of the cohabitation experiment brought unexpected developments that sent ripples through the scientific community. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's expanded research program yielded results that surpassed even her most optimistic projections. Jeffrey found himself at the center of these discoveries, his telepathic abilities expanding at an unprecedented rate. One morning, as he sat in the common area of the research facility, Jeffrey's eyes widened in surprise. He turned to Tara, who was engrossed in a datapad nearby. "I can hear the thoughts of everyone in the building," he whispered, his voice a mix of awe and trepidation. Tara looked up, her expression mirroring his astonishment. "That's incredible, Jeffrey. How clearly?" "Crystal clear. It's like a symphony of voices, each distinct yet harmonizing." Dr. Rodriguez, overhearing their conversation, rushed over with her monitoring equipment. "This is extraordinary," she muttered, her fingers flying over the device's interface. "Your neural activity is off the charts, Jeffrey." As the human participants exhibited these enhanced telepathic abilities, the Betazoid partners, including Tara, experienced their own surprising changes. Tara noticed her physical strength increasing, her movements becoming more fluid and precise. During a routine physical assessment, she effortlessly lifted weights that would have challenged her just weeks before. The human doctor overseeing the test stared in disbelief. "Your muscle density and overall stamina have increased significantly," he explained, reviewing the results. "It's as if your body is adapting to match human physical capabilities." These developments caught the attention of both the Galactic Federation observers and the Betazoid High Council. Heated discussions erupted in council chambers and Federation briefing rooms about the long-term implications for both species. Meanwhile, Captain Marcus Steele seized the opportunity presented by the experiment's success. He worked tirelessly, engaging in complex negotiations to finalize a mutual defense pact between Earth and Betazed. The signing ceremony, held in the Grand Hall of the Betazoid capital, became a historic event broadcast across both worlds. Jeffrey and Tara stood among the assembled dignitaries, their hands intertwined as they watched Earth's ambassador and the Betazoid High Council leader affix their signatures to the document. The hall erupted in applause, the sound washing over them like a wave. "This is just the beginning," Tara murmured, her eyes shining with emotion. Jeffrey nodded, feeling the surge of hope and excitement emanating from the crowd. "Earth is one step closer to joining the Galactic Federation," he replied, noting the approving looks from the Federation representatives in attendance. As the ceremony concluded, their attention turned to another groundbreaking development. Lyra's hybrid pregnancy had become a subject of intense scientific interest and public fascination. Jeffrey and Tara accompanied her to a medical examination, where a joint team of human and Betazoid experts hovered around advanced imaging equipment. "Remarkable," the lead physician breathed, pointing to the holographic display. "The fetus is displaying a unique combination of human and Betazoid traits. Look here, early signs of both physical resilience and telepathic potential." Lyra's face glowed with a mixture of pride and nervousness. "Is everything normal?" she asked hesitantly. The doctor smiled reassuringly. "As normal as can be for something so extraordinary. Your child is thriving, Lyra." As they left the medical bay, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Security personnel rushed past them, their faces grim. Captain Steele's voice crackled over the intercom system. "Attention, all personnel. We have a security breach. The Purity Vanguard has infiltrated the facility. This is not a drill. Implement emergency protocols immediately." Jeffrey's enhanced senses kicked into overdrive. He could feel the panic rising in the minds around him, the determined focus of the security teams, and something else. A cold, hard drive that he realized must belong to the infiltrators. "Tara," he said urgently, grabbing her arm. "We need to alert security. They're after Lyra." Tara nodded, her eyes closing in concentration as she reached out with her amplified telepathic powers. "I can sense them. They're moving towards the East Wing." Jeffrey tapped his communicator. "Security, this is Jeffrey Boyd. The intruders are heading for the East Wing. We believe they're targeting Lyra." As chaos erupted around them, Jeffrey and Tara sprang into action. They coordinated with the security teams, using their unique abilities to track the movements of the Purity Vanguard members. Jeffrey led a group to protect the visiting Galactic Federation delegates, while Tara focused on safeguarding Lyra and the other research participants. The facility became a battleground, with security forces clashing with the determined Purity Vanguard members. Amidst the chaos, Varun arrived with a group of evolved betazoids, their combined telepathic strength forming a formidable defense. As Jeffrey maneuvered through the corridors, guiding the Federation delegates to safety, he felt a familiar presence approach. Dr. Zinn burst into view, his face flushed with excitement despite the danger. "Jeffrey," he called out, "I've made a breakthrough with the artifacts. There's an ancient betazoid defensive technique. It combines telepathic abilities with physical combat." Jeffrey's eyes widened. "Can you explain it quickly?" Dr. Zinn nodded, his words tumbling out in a rush as he described the technique. Jeffrey absorbed the information, his mind racing with possibilities. "Tara," he called out telepathically, their bond allowing for instant communication. "I'm sending you some information. It might help us turn the tide." As Tara received the knowledge, she adapted quickly, her enhanced physical abilities melding seamlessly with her telepathic powers. She moved with fluid grace, neutralizing several Purity Vanguard members with a combination of mental assault and precise physical strikes. The Galactic Federation delegates watched in awe as humans, traditional betazoids, and evolved betazoids worked in perfect synchronization to defend the facility. Jeffrey and Tara's shared empathic link allowed them to anticipate attacks and coordinate their responses with uncanny precision. As the security forces gained the upper hand, Jeffrey sensed a spike of desperate anger. He turned to see the leader of the Purity Vanguard cornered at the end of a corridor, holding a small device with a blinking red light. "Stay back!" the leader shouted, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and commitment. "This explosive will take out the entire facility if I activate it." Jeffrey stepped forward, his hands raised in a calming gesture. He reached out with his empathic abilities, establishing a connection with the desperate man before him. "We don't need to end this in violence," Jeffrey said softly, his voice steady and soothing. "I understand your fears. You're worried about losing your culture, your identity, but this isn't the way to protect it." The leader's grip on the device tightened, but Jeffrey could sense the conflict within him. He pressed on, drawing on his diplomatic experience and newly enhanced empathic abilities. "Think about what you're fighting for," Jeffrey continued. "The preservation of betazoid culture. But culture isn't static. It grows, adapts, becomes stronger through new connections. What we're doing here, it's not diluting your society. It's strengthening it, opening up new possibilities." As Jeffrey spoke, he could feel the resistance in the leader's mind beginning to crumble. The man's hand trembled, the explosive device wavering in his grip. "Your people have a rich history of embracing change," Jeffrey said, taking another careful step forward. "This is just another chapter in that story. We can work together to ensure that betazoid traditions are honored and preserved, even as we move forward into a new era of cooperation." The leader's eyes filled with tears as the device slipped from his fingers. Security personnel moved swiftly to secure him and the explosive, as Jeffrey let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. In the aftermath of the attack, the facility buzzed with activity. Medical teams tended to the injured, while security forces conducted a thorough sweep of the building. Jeffrey found Tara in the common area, her face etched with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "You did it," she said, pulling him into a tight embrace. "You talked him down." Jeffrey returned the hug, feeling the tension of the past hours begin to dissipate. "We did it," he corrected her. "All of us, together." As they stood there surrounded by the controlled chaos of the post-attack cleanup, Jeffrey sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The Galactic Federation delegates were huddled together, speaking in hushed but excited tones. One of them, a tall, azure-skinned being, approached Jeffrey and Tara. "What we witnessed here today," the delegate began, their multifaceted eyes gleaming with interest, "was truly remarkable. The level of cooperation between humans and betazoids, the adaptation of abilities, the peaceful resolution of conflict. These are exactly the qualities we look for in potential Federation members." Jeffrey and Tara exchanged a look of surprise and hope as the delegate continued. "I believe it's time we had a serious discussion about fast-tracking Earth's application for Federation membership," the delegate said, a smile playing at the corners of their mouth. "There's much to be done, of course, but after today's events, I think we can all agree that Earth has proven itself ready for the galactic stage." As the implications of the delegate's words sank in, Jeffrey felt a surge of excitement coursing through him. He looked at Tara, saw the same emotion reflected in her eyes, and knew that they stood on the brink of a new chapter, not just for themselves, but for both their worlds and perhaps the entire galaxy. The following months passed in a whirlwind of activity as Earth prepared for its formal induction into the Galactic Federation. Jeffrey and Tara found themselves at the heart of the preparations, their unique bond and abilities making them invaluable to the process. As the day of the ceremony approached, anticipation built across both Earth and Beta Z. The event was to be held on Beta Z, a symbolic gesture of unity between the two worlds. Dignitaries from across the galaxy arrived in sleek starships, filling the skies above the Betazoid capital. On the morning of the ceremony, Jeffrey stood before a mirror in his quarters, adjusting his formal attire. He felt a mix of nervousness and excitement, not just for the historic occasion, but for what he planned to do. Tara entered the room, her eyes widening as she saw him. "You look very handsome," she said, a smile playing on her lips. Jeffrey turned, his breath catching as he saw her in her traditional Betazoid gown. "And you look absolutely stunning," he replied, taking her hand. As they made their way to the grand amphitheater where the ceremony was to be held, Jeffrey could feel the buzz of excitement in the air. Thousands of minds, both human and alien, radiated a sense of anticipation and joy. The ceremony began with a series of speeches from various Federation representatives. Jeffrey listened intently, his hand intertwined with Tara's, as they spoke of the bright future that lay ahead for Earth and its people. Finally, it was Jeffrey's turn to speak. He ascended the stage, looking out over the sea of faces before him. Taking a deep breath, he began his prepared speech, outlining Earth's journey to this moment and its commitment to galactic cooperation. As he neared the end of his speech, Jeffrey paused, his heart racing. This was the moment he had been waiting for. "Today marks a new chapter for Earth," he said, his voice clear and strong. "But it also marks a new chapter in my personal life." A murmur of curiosity rippled through the crowd as Jeffrey turned to face Tara, who sat in the front row, her eyes wide with surprise. "Tara," Jeffrey said, his voice filled with emotion, "you have been by my side through this incredible journey. You've shown me the beauty of your world and your people. You've helped me grow in ways I never thought possible." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small box. "Will you join me in taking the next step? Will you marry me?" A collective gasp echoed through the amphitheater as Jeffrey opened the box, revealing a ring that combined Earth and Betazoid designs. Tara stood, tears glistening in her eyes, and nodded. "Yes," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the silent crowd. "Yes, I will." The amphitheater erupted in cheers as Jeffrey slipped the ring onto Tara's finger. The couple embraced, their joy palpable to everyone present, especially to the empathic Betazoids in the audience. The ceremony quickly transformed into a celebration of both Earth's induction and Jeffrey and Tara's engagement. As news of the proposal spread, it became clear that their wedding would be more than just a personal milestone. It would be a symbol of the union between Earth and Beta Z. In the weeks that followed, preparations for the wedding took center stage. It was decided that the ceremony would be the first officially recognized human Betazoid union to be broadcast across both worlds. On the day of the wedding, Billions of viewers tuned in to watch. The ceremony combined elements from both human and Betazoid traditions, creating a beautiful fusion of cultures. As Jeffrey and Tara exchanged vows, something unexpected happened. Tara suddenly gasped, her hand flying to her abdomen. A look of wonder crossed her face as she turned to Jeffrey. "I can feel it," she whispered, her voice picked up by the microphones. "My body, it's changing. It's like everything is aligning, becoming whole." The medical team present quickly confirmed what Tara was experiencing. Her body was completing its transformation, fully activating her reproductive system. This moment, witnessed by millions, became a powerful symbol of the successful integration of human and Betazoid biology. As the newlyweds sealed their union with a kiss, another momentous event was unfolding. In a nearby medical facility, Lyra had gone into labor. The birth of the first human Betazoid hybrid child was about to become a reality. Jeffrey and Tara, still in their wedding attire, rushed to the medical facility as soon as the ceremony concluded. They arrived just in time to witness the birth of Lyra's child, a healthy infant that displayed a perfect blend of both species traits. As news of the birth spread, it became clear that this day marked not just the union of two individuals or two planets, but the beginning of a new chapter in interspecies relations and galactic diversity. In the following days, as Jeffrey and Tara prepared for their honeymoon, Dr. Rodriguez made a groundbreaking announcement. Her continued research had revealed that the genetic changes in human Betazoid couples were transmissible to their offspring, creating a new subspecies with enhanced physical and telepathic abilities. This revelation sent shockwaves through the scientific community and opened up exciting possibilities for the future of both species. As Jeffrey and Tara boarded their starship for their honeymoon, they couldn't help but feel that they were at the beginning of something much bigger than themselves. Their ship lifted off, leaving behind a world forever changed by their unlikely meeting and the events that followed. As they looked out at the stars, Jeffrey pulled Tara close. "Ready for our next adventure?" he asked, a smile playing on his lips. Tara nodded, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Always," she replied, as their ship accelerated towards the vast expanse of space, carrying them towards a future filled with endless possibilities.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.